Hey, what's up guys? Bajheera here. So for this video, I'm going to talk about warriors, okay? So I'm not going to try to make this a QQ video because I don't want to do that. I've always loved warriors, I always will, and I always intend to play my warrior, and I will always have fun with warriors. The thing is, right now, after the most recent sort of hot nerfs, I feel like warriors got a little bit over-nerfed, and I'm going to talk just a little bit about some ways I think we could make warriors a little bit better. Now, once again, I still like playing warrior, still doing okay playing warrior, but the thing about warriors in Legion was that we don't really have all that much utility. We really don't have all that much defensive firepower in terms of, like, self-healing. Our cooldowns are extremely long in terms of, like, Die by the Sword and Rallying Cry. And our damage was the one thing that sort of carried us through, not having a lot of defensive capabilities and not having a lot of, like, you know, team utility. Now, the problem was, in the most recent nerfs, they nerfed Echo Slam by, you know, half, basically. So Echo Slam does about half the damage it used to. Echo Slam is the talent, by the way, that causes your Colossus Smash. It's an honor talent to cause your Colossus Smash to deal a certain percentage of your opponent's health in damage. That ignores armor and everything 2.5 seconds later. So it used to be like 10%. So you would Colossus Smash, it would do whatever damage it was going to do, and then 2.5 seconds later, they would take 10% of their HP and damage, which was awesome, but it was a lot of damage. So they nerfed it down to 5%. And that's like, okay, that's a pretty big nerf. Another thing they did was they made Tactician not proc as much due to Exploit the Weakness being nerfed. So this used to give you 10% more rage used. Well, not actual more rage used, but like the calculation was calculated with 10% more rage, up to 60% if you had 6 total, like, talent points put into this. So you can put 3 baseline, and then you have your relics can put in, you know, 10 each if you wanted to. So that got nerfed. They did buff Tactician in terms of 30%. That's what they said. They buffed it by 30%, so it procs more often. But they also nerfed Hamstring proccing Tactician. So that was also basically taking Arms Warrior damage, and they also nerfed Focus Rage, but that's for PvE mostly. PvP, it already only does 20% more damage, so it's already, like, super nerfed for PvP. But basically what happened for Warriors is they took the one thing that we were good at, which is dealing damage, which sort of made up for our defensive, like, lack of, and our lack of utility, and they nerfed that. So now we're proccing Colossus Smash less often, and when Colossus Smash does proc, we're dealing less damage with it, basically. So, kind of sad, but one of the things that I've been thinking about is, like, okay, so we see that warriors are, you know, in a kind of a weird spot right now, because all we really bring to the table is damage, and now our damage isn't even that good. So we're really kind of useless. Still a fun playstyle, I think. I don't think we need, like, a lot of huge, like, rotational or playstyle changes. I think that there are, like, 2 main playstyles for warriors right now. There are things like, for PvP, a lot of time, this is my PvE spec. This is kind of one way to play, though, if you wanted to. You could play a Focus Rage, really hard-hitting Mortal Strike build with even go something like Sharpened Blade. Or you play a faster-paced Mortal Combo setup with Echo Slam and Shadow of the Colossus, where you're charging a lot to reset your cooldown of charge with double time and things like that. So, bearing that in mind, I think some things that could be cool to make warriors just a little bit better are a return to, if you guys remember, in, like, alpha or beta, this talent for arms, defensive measures, did not do this useless increases the damage, or reduces the damage taken by initial 5% Die by the Sword. Instead of affecting a 3-minute cooldown in a minuscule way, what it actually did was give us a use of Victory Rush. Not like a full Victory Rush, I don't think, but it was like maybe a 10% Victory Rush, something like that. I think 15% Victory Rush. Every 5 or 6 seconds while in defensive stance. So it was an ability that while you're in defensive stance allowed you to stay in the battle and heal just by pressing a rotational ability. Almost a little bit like Fury, I think. Except for Victory Rush isn't really as much of a rotational ability as Bloodthirst. It doesn't do as much damage, obviously, but having Victory Rush usable every 6 seconds while in D-stance really helped you have some sort of healing as a warrior. And it wasn't really like a cooldown that you had to press or anything important like that. It took a global, but it healed you nicely, and you had to be in defensive stance to use it. So that is something that I think would be awesome to have back. Another thing that I hear people mentioning, and something, I mean, I wouldn't fully disagree with it, but it wouldn't be my first choice, is bringing back Mists of Pandaria Second Wind, where when you get low health, you heal for a certain percentage of your health until you are healed above that percentage of health. And that, I think, could work. Warriors need some sort of healing, and Enraged Regen was okay, but I kind of like, I don't know, I like the idea of defensive measures Victory Rush. That's really cool, because you have to be like right next to your opponents to use it. You have to actually hit somebody with Victory Rush, so you're attacking, you know, somebody to heal yourself, which is really, really neat. You're already staying in defense stance a lot of times, so it's not really that crazy of an ability to put in. I think it'd just be a really good one. Old defensive measures from Alpha would be awesome. Another thing that I think would be fun, that just to sort of put this in, I know this is just me kind of making a video talking, but to sort of phrase my thought process, that sort of would address the lack of self-healing. I think that's one of the huge things that a lot of warriors don't like. The only self-healing that we really have is maybe like Second Wind if you're like out in the world, but you're not going to use that in PvP because you're going to get crushed because you're not in D stance, and you're never going to not get targeted because you're not in D stance, and you're a warrior and you're going to die. People target you all the time in defensive stance anyway because it knows if you just train a warrior long enough, they'll die. But the Touch of Zakaj, the Mortal Strike heal, like even if you went Sweeping Strikes and got the full like talents in this, it wouldn't really heal for all that much, especially not in PvP. So you would like gimp yourself with your talents in order to actually achieve some sort of healing that wouldn't even be there. So Touch of Zakaj is like our only self heal aside from Victory Rush, but we don't have that unless we kill something. And and if you kill something in 3s, the game is pretty much over, unless you kill like a pet. But you know what I'm saying. So I think that would address the healing issue. Our cooldowns are still really long. We still have 3 minutes on Rallying Cry and Die by the Sword, which is kind of like super long cooldowns, powerful cooldowns, but really long cooldowns. So that's the kind of that. But I feel like the defensive measures thing would address a bit of the defensive issues. I'm not trying to massively overbuff warriors, even though they massively over nerfed us just now. Not just now, but a little while ago. Anyway, moving on. I think that one thing that we could do to address the utility issue is something that they changed a little while ago for this expansion, which is charge now rooting, which is like the worst thing. Warriors hate. I mean, I hate that. I don't think any warrior wants to have our charge root instead of stun. But putting a 1.5 second stun back on charge stun would be really, really neat. And that would allow us to continue to use double time, which is what we have to do at this point to do any damage with our Shadow of the Colossus talent, which allows Colossus Smash to be reset by charging. That would allow us to use Shadow of the Colossus while using double time and still having some utility. Because Stormbolt is a 30-second cooldown, stuns for 4 seconds. Shockwave is a 40-second cooldown, stuns for 3 seconds, but it's AoE. Double time would stun, one target for, 1 point, or it would be less than that because a lot of people are using like Relentless, if they're orcs, or they're using Relentless anyway, or they're orc, so it's going to be stun reduced anyway. The stun can't DR, that's a very important thing. So it would be ideally like a 3-second stun, right? It could be on 2 targets. If you take double time, it's going to be on like 17-second cooldown each. But you could either chain them back to back. You could use this as like an off interrupt for a healer. So just having charge stun, one small little change like that would actually really change the game for warriors in terms of our utility. I'm not really asking for a whole lot more, but I think charge stun would be a great way to address our lack of utility, and it wouldn't be a massive overbuff, but it would just be one more little thing in our arsenal to, focus charge heals. That was like one of the most fun things to do as a warrior. Just a little stop to a heal, or you could do like a double charge to really lock a target down if you're going to healer. A small change like that would have a big impact, but it wouldn't be an overbuff, I don't think, but it would be very, very helpful, and it would be something, at least that I would love as a warrior. I've always loved the little charge stun interrupt, just to add to your arsenal of things you can do. And since our arsenal is very limited right now, we have like, basically your CC in Arena is like, okay guys, I'm going to fear, I'll see you guys in a minute and a half when I have something else to do. I mean, you can hit your pummels, you can hit your reflects if you use the reflect honor talent, but outside of that utility, like hamstring, you have mortal strike, I mean, your utility is very low. And people don't really have a reason to bring a warrior to an arena match a lot of times because, like I mentioned before, all we do is damage and we don't even do damage. So that's kind of like, that's the short and sweet of it. I think this would allow us to have a little bit more, the charge stun would allow us to have a little bit more in our toolkit in terms of utility, and that would be really fun too. So that addressed a little bit of the healing issues. I think that we could fix with one talent change. I feel like one ability change to charge stun would fix our utility issues. And in terms of damage, I really think that we should rethink the 5% on Echo Slam. I think that's a little severe. 10% is probably a little high. 5% is very low. It doesn't really seem to do anything. Maybe 7.5 would be a good place to start. Take a look at that and see if that's effective. Now, I heard that 7 was already in the game at one point. And if it was, let's just go back to that, because that felt pretty good. 10%, a little high. Let's do 7%. 7.5% would be fine. Another thing that would be really cool is to actually have Sharpened Blade be a talent we can use. A 45-second cooldown is way too long for something like this. I mean, when you think about Sharpened Blade, it reduces the healing taken by 70% for 4 seconds. So it's almost like a stun. If you use it on a healer, they can't really heal themselves. If you use it on something else, they're not going to get healed. It's a powerful cooldown, basically like a stun on the healer, if they're, either way, right? Because basically what the healer's doing isn't going to work, or isn't going to work nearly as well for 4 seconds. Why is it on a 45-second cooldown when you have like a Stormbolt on a 30-second cooldown for 4 seconds? Shockwaves for 3, for 4 seconds on AoE, and it's a 20-second cooldown if you hit 3 targets. Why is our healing debuff on a 45-second cooldown? I know it makes the Mortal Strike hit harder. I know it puts the healing debuff on there, but that's awesome. That would be, like, I love Echo Slam. I love the way that plays. It's really fast-paced. It's more about consistent damage rather than chunk damage in terms of, like, big burst. But it would be cool to at least have the option to choose another talent. And I think Sharpened Blade would be a cool way to do it, because you either have the consistent shred damage buzzsaw effect of Echo Slam, or you have, like, the big chunk healing reduction on Sharpened Blade. But what needs to happen with Sharpened Blade is the cooldown needs to be cut at least in half. I think 15 to 20 seconds would probably be pretty good. Because you can expect, like, every couple Mortal Strikes, you're like, okay, your teammates are like, all right, this next Mortal Strike is going to be a big one, because it's going to hit for 30% more damage, and it's going to reduce the healing, so you guys can time your bursts around that sort of thing, and that would be really, really cool. At least I think so. And it opens up other builds. Like, you could even play that with Pain. You could even play that with Pain Train, and you could play with Focus Rage in PvP. I mean, if they want to buff Focus Rage in PvP, that'd probably be pretty cool. Keep it on par with PvE. There's 30% across the board, because then that would allow you to do. You'd spend a lot of rage to make your cooldowns come back up faster with anger management, and you'd have Pain Train to buff your teammates and already reduce the cooldown of Battle Cry even more, and that would allow you to dump some really big Mortal Strikes with Focus Rage. So I feel like having more than one build is a good thing, but we're not going to have more than one build if this doesn't get changed at all. Echo Slam is, even though it's like way worse, even though it's bad, it's still the best. That's not really in a good position to be in as a warrior. So the main things for me: defensive measures, the victory rush heal kind of thing when you're in D-stance would be awesome. For utility, I think the addition of charge stun alone would really change the game for warriors and allow us to pick double time, which is a requirement almost to maintain uptime and to deal damage. In terms of actual damage dealing, Echo Slam nerf needs to be not fully reverted, but changed to like 7.5%. And I think Sharpened Blade needs to be like a 15 to 20 second cooldown, so we have different options in our build and different ways we want to deal damage. That's kind of my thoughts right now. If you guys want to let me know what you think in the comments, please do. I'd be happy to read them, happy to respond to them. I know that I'm definitely biased as a warrior, for sure. I know a lot of people out there are just like, I just want to see warriors burn. That's not me. A lot of times, I would prefer that people have the game be in a situation where their class feels fun and effective to them across the board. But as a warrior, I definitely have a little bit of insight on... I feel like I have a little bit of insight on how I enjoy playing the game, and the ways that I think would be, help a warrior be more effective without becoming, like, busted out of control. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching the video. Feel free to leave comments below. Happy to check them out, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace!